Ladies, gents, whatever you want to call yourselves, I don't give a damn. It's championship week. It's over. Fantasy football season has come to an end. All the work we put in the off season hopefully was fruitful for you. Hopefully we led you to the promised land. If we didn't, we apologize. We tried our best, even though our takes stink. We really did try our best, believe it or not. We were not trying to give you purposely bad takes. It just so happened that it turned out that way.
Well, there was one. I mean, 6 months of RJing Justin Herbert into a rookie of the year. Kind of a bad take on our part, but in the end, it kind of worked out for me. So I'm all right with that.
Yeah, it worked out for Noah and his Chargers fandom. But man, it was a crazy, crazy week. I mean, this was, I want to say like we don't say it every year, maybe we do, but this was truly one of the craziest championship weeks that I have ever experienced personally, just in terms of the swings and ups and downs. And like, we watched football on Friday, and I tweeted out Kamara put fucking fantasy teams in the body bag, and then Saturday rolls around, right, and we got Tom Brady and Mike Evans bringing people back from the dead, right? And then we got Jeff Wilson and later on bringing people back from the dead. And then Sunday comes around, we got the second coming of David Johnson putting people over top. We got Brandon Cooks, all the has-beens that we thought were washed came back out of the fucking woodworks to carry people to the promised land. And then we close out the night with Devontae Adams, and that would have been a crazy week in itself, right? Would have been like, wow, that was a fucking crazy week. But no, because what happens next?
Lord and
Stephon
Savior.
Diggs, our Lord and Savior, Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen puts me in a body bags and brings Noah back to the promised land. So man,
Yeah.
it's been a wild season. I know Noah, you had a wild trip yourself. Shout out, congratulations to Scott, our
Yeah,
editor in
Scott,
chief.
huge
Huge congrats.
congrats to you for almost winning the I think it's Get Faded championship. Man, Friday night, Christmas, Alvin Kamara, 57 to my fucking skull. I'm like, all right, Scott, thanks for the present, buddy. Then he's got some other guys going crazy. I know D Hop and Nick Chubb didn't do so well. I was down by I think 110 going into Sunday Night Football. I had Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones. I know that you guys know I hate AJ Dillon for how much he weighs. You don't know how much it pained me that I'm like, okay, if he had AJ Dillon stats, I would have won. Just kind of thrown it away. Like, congrats, Scott. Aaron Jones is like 500 or 205 pounds. He's not going to do anything. AJ Dillon's 500 pounds. He did everything. I thought I was out of it, down by like 70 going into Monday Night Football. I wasn't watching the game. I was like watching the Grizzlies or something. And then Yannick keeps texting me, are you watching this? Are you watching this? I kept writing back, no, I can't feel this pain. I flip it over when the game ends, scores the third touchdown. Man, I sent Scott one of the biggest congrats he would have ever seen in his entire life. Ended up winning by like 10. Scott, you're a great guy. You got my payment out to me real quick, so I'm appreciative of that. But all in all, just trying to say, Scott, congratulations.
Congrats,
You
man.
played yourself.
Truly.
Don't ever play yourself. Don't ever play yourself. Don't ever play yourself. Don't ever play yourself. Congratulations, you played yourself.
You truly deserve it. One of the greatest to ever do it. You're the GOAT. Noah and I we're just on this channel speaking the gospel that you have bestowed upon us, having competed with you. So no one more deserving than an almost win than you.
Mm-hmm.
So just, shout out to Scott, guys. If you have Scott, if you follow him on Twitter, if you don't, it's a fucking mistake. Number one.
If you don't,
fix
make
that
a Twitter
mistake.
and then follow him just to see the tweets. He made a video, a compilation of people I've never really seen. A few of them I have because they're in my leagues. People I've never seen in my life telling me congratulations. One guy called me a celebrity. And he said, congratulations, Noah, you're a celebrity. You're going to win Get Faded. At that moment, I'm like, all right, it's a wrap. This guy's getting people out of the fucking boondocks to congratulate me. And it ended up working. So I think I might just play that. If I die tonight, play that at my funeral, my congratulations speech, because I was called a champion before it happened.
Yeah, for sure. Make sure you guys follow Scott at BDGE Scott with 2 T's. I don't know if anyone Scott spells their name with 1 T. If they do, they're fucking psychopath. Make sure you report them to the FBI. But yeah, that's Scott. Scott, this is for you right here. This is for you.
See the goat? I
My
like how you put it to the camera.
My girlfriend got me this for stocking stuff for Christmas. So you're the GOAT, Scott. This is for you. All right, but yeah, man, it was a wild week. I mean, you were on the good side of it. I was on the good side of some, bad side on others. So I'm in this dynasty league which I commission, and I had Alvin Kamara, right, and I had like Dalvin Cook, and I had Tom Brady, and I thought like after Friday, I was like, oh man, I'm in like a really fucking good spot here to like take home the. It's a rolling pot, and I won the first year. So the first person to win three times, doesn't have to be in a row. First person to win 3 times gets the rolling pot. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna add a second win to my total here, and then Mike Evans comes along, and then David Johnson comes along, and then Mike Gesicki comes along, and then Logan Thomas garbage time comes along, and then I was going into Monday up like 40, and then Josh Allen just like put the fucking coffin in me. I lost by like 1 point in this league. I scored 261 points, and I lost. I scored 262, and I lost to 263. And kudos to that guy Nico, who I played in the league with him. Great dynasty player. He built a hell of a team himself. We actually went up head to head like 3 times this year. Every single time it was first scoring versus like second scoring. It was crazy. And it just happened in the championship. Obviously,
You know
we
what that
got the
means,
W. So
Mike? I
that
need
one.
a new co-host. Sounds like Nico's got you running laps.
Yeah, he's
Because
got
you
my
got
number,
one point
dude.
every week.
He got my number. Beat me 2-1 this season. And yeah, it was so I lost that league, and then in another league, I had Stephon Diggs against Josh Allen and Cole Beasley, and I won that league by 1 point because Stephon Diggs just went ham, obviously, and yards for a receiver are worth more than yards for a quarterback. And then in another league, I was down 40 going into Monday night with just Stephon Diggs, and I won that league by like 1 point. So it's just like close stuff all around. It was honestly like the back and forth, the roller coaster of like fucking up and down throughout the weekend was just one of the craziest things. And you don't win all of them, but it was fucking exciting. I got my blood boiling for sure.
Dude, I almost passed out. That third touchdown by Diggs, I was like, is him? Like, I'm not even gonna say the word. I know last week I tried to say a word that wasn't a word. I'm not gonna say it. I was like just staring at the ref. I'm like, please just put your fucking hands up. Put your hands up. I see this, and I go crazy. I'm like, that's all I needed. I sent Scott a congrats letter, and it was over. But I think the point of this video is we're gonna look back at what we did this year, some of our worst takes, because we're not afraid to be like, hey, we're wrong. Because guess what? Football's a random game. We're kind of stupid, and we're not afraid to say it because I feel like at some point, like a lot of the numbers are the same. Everybody can say it. You just want to bring like entertainment and like something that's easy to listen to. So I feel like what's easier to listen to than giving you guys bullets to shoot us with. So here are some of the guys that we've been wrong about. And speaking of Stephon Diggs, we're actually going to hit the intro first and then we'll get into him. All right, so with Stephon Diggs, it kind of falls into the same bucket as Diggs, even DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, and also Robbie Anderson. The narrative of receivers changing teams in the offseason, playing poorly because they're in a new offense with a new coach and a new quarterback. The issue is, and I haven't really looked into the numbers too much, a lot of the charts and shit that I see on Twitter when people do it, you see a few names on there, one of which being Kelvin Benjamin. You got to realize like Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins going to play with Josh Allen and going to play with Kyler Murray is not the same as 285-pound, fresh out of Applebee's, all you can eat buffet, whatever. Kelvin Benjamin catching passes from was it even Josh Allen there? Like a young Josh Allen who wasn't accurate, who we've seen be good with like smaller receivers. So I think actually wasn't like too low on either one of those guys because I was kind of looking into the numbers and I think Nick brought up in a video and kind of changed my perspective too. He's like, well, Diggs, the one year he got a lot of targets, he basically produced as much as he did the next year where he didn't get as many targets because his efficiency and volume kind of balanced out. I'm like, well, he's going to be the one there. We saw John Brown the year prior kind of show out there. So you can kind of figure a guy of his talent with Josh Allen progressing, he's going to do better. But I think just as a whole, we kind of have to change our outlook on things like that and take it into perspective. And I remember last year, one of the first videos we did, it was the work that you did on the red zone and the goal line touches. And you brought up a good point. It's like when you compare people to the average, it's not really a fair comparison. When you compare Aaron Jones's goal line efficiency to Alfred fucking Blue, like obviously you're going to think he's going to regress when one guy's waiting tables and the other one's in the NFL and the best offense in the league. So I think you have to take everything into context when we see these charts getting thrown around like, oh, this guy struggled because he went this offense to this offense. Golden Tate went to Philly middle of the year and had a pretty decent season. Amari Cooper went to the Dallas Cowboys and had a great season. They're two pretty good receivers. I think that we learned this year that a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, a guy like Diggs, a guy like even Robbie Anderson to a lesser extent, going to play with his old college coach. They're going to have a path to touches. They're going to have a role. And I think this offseason with Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson, Kenny Galladay, I think there's a few other free agents up in the air, even at the receiver position. If they land in a good spot, if any of them go to Houston, even like a Will Fuller, if he goes somewhere else, I'm not going to shy away because I know the talent's there and they're probably going to land in a spot that to use them as either like a 1A or a 1B because we've seen them do it before.
Yeah, I did. Big fat L for the wide receivers transitioning teams. And the funny thing though is, like like I said, I had Diggs on like 3 of my championship teams last night, and like he got me the W. So it's like even though I was lower on Diggs than I should have been, it still like worked out because it seemed like everyone else was even lower than I was.
I think it's because people were afraid to sell him too. Like you probably didn't want to sell him for the price people were willing to pay for him because you knew he
I
was
was
better than
never
the
a
market.
seller. I was never a seller. I just wasn't sure if I was a drafter or a buyer. But I pivoted in season to buy him on a couple teams. One of them led me to the championships, obviously, so that was totally worth it. But yeah, I think it definitely we got to pay more attention to where they land. The other problem with Diggs though is like I was not high on Josh Allen, which is another big fat L in my loss column for this season. Like this type of improvement, frankly, is just like unprecedented. That like most guys kind of like just rubber band between their range of completion percentages like for their career. What they show early on is very indicative what they're going to do later on in their career. And Josh Allen jumping from like the 50s to like the mid to high 60s and playing like the way that he is just incredible. So did not really foresee that one coming, and then just obviously totally underrated Diggs on that move. But yeah, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of elite guys coming up for free agency this year. Chris Godwin, wherever he goes, I'm barring like even the worst teams. Like if he goes to like the Jags or like Jets, like they're gonna get a top end quarterback as well. So it's like I think I'm gonna be a buyer on Chris Godwin no matter where he goes. Kenny Galladay, just another great talent. Unsure of where he's going, but like if any of these guys land on like Green Bay, like you're gonna be all in, right? Will Fuller, Kenny Galladay, all these guys landing on Green Bay is gonna be good. Even those are Devontae Adams there. Aaron Rodgers obviously is someone that can produce like 2 top end wide receiver ones. So that's somewhere you want to be. But yeah, man, I mean, elite wide receivers going to a good team with a good fit. That's the key. I don't know if I'm going to be buying every single person because like OBJ was an elite wide receiver. He was the best of the best. And Baker Mayfield was coming off a historic rookie season where he like set all the rookie records, right? So that I think that's one where like that left a really bad taste in people's mouths. Where it was like, hey, this is an elite guy that went somewhere and just totally fucking fizzled out. Whether it's because of injuries, fit, whatever like you want to say, it just like wasn't really great. So I think we're gonna really need to study, what the fit is in terms of like who these players are. Like Chris Godwin, Kenny Galladay is a jump ball specialist, right? If Kenny Galladay goes to like freaking Drew Brees, like I'm not going to be excited because Drew Brees cannot throw the ball 10 yards downfield, right?
Yeah, but Taysom Hill can.
But yeah, Taysom Hill can run it 10 yards downfield. I don't know if he can throw it 10 yards downfield. But if, for example, if Drew Brees retires and Jameis Winston takes over as quarterback, then you're all the way the fuck in because that's a great fit in terms of like what Kenny Galladay brings in the deep game and the fearlessness and interception throwing ability of Jameis Winston, of just the chucking and fucking mentality. Like that makes me excited. If he lands on like the Colts with another year of noodle arm Rivers, I'm not excited. Rivers had a great year, but I'm not trusting him with the deep ball one bit. Right. So it's all about fit. I think it's all going to come down to fit. It's going to come down to landing spot. So we'll take you through that in the offseason as we see this play out to see where guys land. We will absolutely kind of walk through those scenarios one by one. But yeah, big fat L on my forehead for fading DeAndre Hopkins and not being in high enough on Stephon Diggs, who, Nick put out a tweet today saying that like Stephon Diggs shouldn't really be going anywhere much later than where Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams will go next year. And I 100% agree with that because the only difference between him and Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams this season was touchdowns. He was a target hog. He was getting it deep. He was getting it everywhere. And we know that Stephon Diggs can score touchdowns. He's one of the best contested catch specialists in the league. So he can get it done in the red zone. So I think that's a bit of bad luck. But if all those things align, he continues to retain this role. Josh Allen, even if Josh Allen regresses a bit, he can absolutely line up and be that wide receiver 1 overall next year.
100%. Yeah, and they can't run the ball. They drafted a running back. They drafted one year prior, and Josh Allen's good on the ground. They can't run the ball. Cole Beasley was getting a lot of targets. John Brown, when he was healthy, was getting targets. Stephon Diggs is still producing. He is an elite receiver in every sense of the word. He is fringy top 5 dynasty for me because he's still 27. And what? You're going to get 3 more years of absolute prime, and then he can work out of the slot if he does lose a step. So I'm all in on him. A guy that I was not all out on, but I was definitely lower than consensus. And I've learned my lesson that this word regression is just something fluttering in the air that doesn't mean anything. AJ Brown, I wasn't completely off on him. I think he was my dynasty wide receiver like 12, 13 going to the season. Looking back now, that was mistaken. I said the reason why I was fading him was because I thought his touchdowns were going to regress. He had like 8 touchdowns and like 6 of them came from 40 yards out. It turns out, Mike, that when you're good at something in college and then you go to the NFL in your first year in the league with Mariota and Ryan Tannehill playing quarterback, who used to play wide receiver, and you carry that skill set over and you do it week after week, maybe it's not like a fluke. Maybe you're just really good at this stuff. So Dalvin Cook, who breaks off a lot of tackles, maybe it's not fluky that it breaks off tackles. Maybe he's a really good running back. Maybe Mike Evans catching 12 touchdowns a year, winning deep down the field despite running a 4.5. Maybe he's just really good at like getting a release off the line and winning with leverage. Maybe Devontae Adams is really good at scoring touchdowns. Maybe we shouldn't expect guys to regress just because a single counting number is bigger than it should be. And you've got to take a little game film. You got to take a little common sense into it. If a guy's really good at something and he's shown continuously that they're going to do it and the offense is putting them in situations to continue doing it, maybe you shouldn't fade that player. Because I look like an idiot now because AJ Brown is a top 5 dynasty receiver for me. We're heading into the offseason. I'm like, is he a wide receiver 1? Yes, no, in the past, he is a wide receiver 1. He is every sense of the word a wide receiver 1. And I think the same could be said for DK Metcalf, who we were also both a little bit lower on than consensus because we didn't think he could repeat it. Same with like Terry McLaurin because the analytical profile. It's like sometimes you got to throw away your preconceived notions about things and be like, okay, this guy's really good and he's going to continue to be really good because he's really good at a really young age.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, man, I mean, AJ Brown, I remember when we had the first conversation, like I was kind of on your side and I was like, hey, like this guy is, there's no way he's going to kind of repeat this type of like yak ability, this type of touchdown, this type of per touch efficiency. But then like what kind of flipped it for me is when I started looking at like Tennessee Titans, I was like, hey, like this offense might regress TD wise, but they're also going to regress positively from like a passing game script. Like they just can't keep running it that much. Like, and you saw like this year, they got into some tough game scripts and they had to pass it out. I mean, in the championship finals, right? Like Derrick Henry only put up like 10 points because they got blown out, and Ryan Tannehill had to like basically chuck it a lot, which didn't work out. But over the course of the season, their pass attempts kind of went up, and that was kind of like the turning point. I was like, okay, this guy's really good, and there's definitely going to be more opportunity, and he's gonna get a full year of Ryan Tannehill. So I'm like kind of in, and that's where I got a lot of AJ Brown after that. But I think to your credit, like most of the time, like it's really hard to maintain that type of regression. But this guy's just turns out to be a beast. I mean, he's a top 3 dynasty wide receiver. If you have him, great, good for you. If you drafted him and as a rookie, you probably got him with like a late first. Fantastic. I mean, you're riding him to the promised land. He is going to be fantastic. Him and DK Metcalf are like the monsters of the league. They are the prototype wide receiver ones. They are the ones that are going to take over to become like the next Andre Johnsons, the next like Julio Jones, like the next like Megatron type receivers. I'm not gonna say they're gonna
Mike
be Hall of
Williams,
Famers.
yeah, just all the beasts out there.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're gonna be for Hall of Famers, but they're gonna be the ones that like maintain that prototype going down the stretch. So it's really exciting to see. So I mean, next up on the list of big misses, I'm gonna go out here, and I don't know if you are gonna take this L with me, but I'm gonna take this big fat L right here on Derrick Henry. And the Derrick Henry loss is an entertaining one because he's been dunking on me, not just this year, but also like the year before this year. And the reason why I missed on him the year before this year was completely different from the reason why I'm missing him this year. And missing him this year because one, we thought TD were gonna regress. But what we didn't account for was the Titans had one of the easiest, softest schedules of all time in terms of like the run schedule. So Derrick Henry continued to ball, but more importantly, Derrick Henry just continued to ball. Like he is an absolute beast. This guy cannot be stopped in the second half. Like I've been watching all these games, and I'm on the like running backs matter less side, but like Derrick Henry absolutely matters because you put another running back in there on that team, they are not doing what Derrick Henry is doing. He is adding EPA. I'm not saying he deserves like top 5 like $15 million a year money. I'd still rather put that somewhere else, but Derrick Henry absolutely matters. I think the good question and the question a lot of you be facing coming in the offseason is, hey, do I ride him out into the sunset or do I try and trade him still? Because I do think that Derrick Henry will command top dollar because he is coming off an absolute beast of a season as the rushing leader. He's still like 3rd in touchdowns, and the team is committed to him, obviously, and the team looks good. But more importantly, like even though he's 27, I think a lot of folks will be able to talk themselves into he didn't really get much workload in this first few years, which is true, right? He didn't get that many touches sitting behind DeMarco Murray. He was splitting a backfield. So he's really only been a workhorse for like 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, right? So you can kind of make the argument he has a lot of tread on tires. But two, he's a fucking like Greek god. This guy's an insane. He literally destroyed Josh Norman. Like he took his soul and he
Yeah,
crushed him.
what
Like that
dignity he had left was pushed
is gone.
right to the ground. He
Is
absolutely
gone.
killed him. Like that
Like
Vance McDonald on Chris Conti when we put him into
yeah,
the fucking shadow realm.
yeah.
That's what he did all over again. He does it basically every week. He turned Earl Smith. What's his name? Earl Smith, right? From
The
the
Lions.
no, I definitely got this name wrong.
Who are you talking
The
about?
safety from the
Earl
Seahawks.
Thomas. Earl Thomas.
I'm cutting that out. I'm cutting that out for sure. No, I'm gonna leave it in. Earl Smith. He turned Earl Thomas into his own fullback on a run to the outside. The guy's an animal, and I think piggybacking off what you're saying, right? He's 27 years old, and he just came off of probably like a close to 350, 400 touch season. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. The thing is, like, he gets better as the season goes on. You would think a guy of that stature, of that workload, and how many times they run him up the middle, and how many he doesn't really get hit too hard, but he's always running between the tackles and stuff like that. You would think he would slow down. And contrary to popular belief, he just like not contrary to popular belief because like everybody talks about December Henry, but like you would think a guy that big, that physical is going to wear down. And year after year, as the year goes on, he continues to improve. And that's why I have more faith in him keeping up this type of production next year, maybe the year after, than a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, because we kind of saw, Ezekiel Elliott wasn't put in the best situation this year with his offensive line, but Taylor Lewan also missed basically the entire year. And Derrick Henry's been great. His left guard was in and out of the lineup. Roger Saffold, I remember he got injured a few times. I just think that the fact that he's shown that he can continue to produce for like 16 straight weeks these past 2 seasons, the fact that they're all in on Derrick Henry and this offense being as efficient as it is, he's something I'm going to hold on to. And Mike, you were asking if I was going to take the L on him this year. You must have forgotten that he already killed me. So I can't take L on a man that already murdered me. It's like Steve Buscemi when he like crosses off the guy on the list with his lipstick. Like I've been crossed off that list. I am gone. Now he's coming after you, Mike. You better watch your ass. And you better hop back on his train this week because it's going to be real dangerous for you. So yeah, I'm not going to take the L there because I kind of shied away from talking about Derrick Henry because I didn't want to get dunked on again. But now you know what it feels like. Now you know what it feels like to fade a top 3 running back that has done everything to prove that he's a top 3 running back. So yeah, that's where I'm at with Derrick Henry. But another kind of hefty running back that
Hold on, before we move on here. Derrick Henry, 344 carries so far in 15 games, 1,777 yards. He's about 233 yards from 2,000, which is absolutely doable because guess who he gets on Sunday? Texans. Houston Texans. Run funnel defense. I could totally see him stiff arming one of these defensive backs into the dirt and breaking off a couple 80-yard touchdown runs. Even if he doesn't, he's going to get another 20 to 30 touches. So you chalk it up to like a 360, 370 carries plus another 20 receptions. So it's another 400 touch, nearly 400 touch season. So he didn't have much tread on his tires before, but he's definitely getting there. I'm not saying so high. What I'm saying is if you are a top end contender, a top flight contender, so that means you're a top 1 to 3 team and there is a clear gap between you and the rest of the field, you will have to ride this man into the sunset because you just do not want to give up that type of advantage, those type of points. But if you're like a middling team or if you just won this year, but you kind of like lucked into it a little bit and you want to like refresh and reload, I would explore trading down by taking a Derrick Henry and turning into like a J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Antonio Gibson, like some of these young running backs who may not give you the scoring advantage yet, but they had a very promising rookie season. You can bet damn sure that they're going to produce and improve going forward. So that's the approach I would take with Derrick Henry. Ride him into the sunset if you are a champion. And if you are, congratulations. But if you aren't, look to make that swap and trade down because, even though he can produce well into his late 20s and maybe even early 30s, his value will absolutely crater no matter what. So if you want to get out, that's the chance to get out now on someone like a Derrick Henry.
Yeah, it's like what we said with Julio Jones last year, right? The upside is him being a top 5 receiver. The downside was him having the year that he had. But he was like a top 5 receiver when he was playing. The injuries caught up to him. He didn't have a full season to kind of put his skill set on display. So he's definitely not somebody I'm trying to sell for anything less than like a mid first round pick. I think that he, again, next year is going to be like a top 3, top 5 running back, even with this new crop of talent coming in. So I'm on board with you there. And, pre-draft, a guy that we were all on board with, Nick as well, we're like, why does anybody like this guy? It's AJ Dillon from Boston College. He can't make a man miss. He's 250 pounds of nothing. Like you're big for no reason. And then we saw this Sunday night, he almost put me in a coffin. And he basically dunked on everybody that ever said he wasn't good at football. He looked really good. I know the Tennessee Titans aren't the best run defense. They're playing in snow. One of his touchdowns, like a 3rd and 1, they ran it to the outside when they were set up to run up the middle, and he broke away for a touchdown. But you can't ignore the fact that he looked good out there. He caught a pass, which I didn't think he could ever do in his entire life. Proved me wrong on one play. And I just think, they sunk what, 2nd, 3rd round draft capital into him. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are free agents this offseason. They've shown zero trust in supporting Aaron Rodgers. They don't add any sort of weapon. So I'm not going to be too overconfident in saying that they bring back Jones or Jamal Williams. If AJ Dillon's the only guy in this offense, I mean, if I was the only run back in this offense, I could probably be like a top 15 guy because it's so good. And Aaron Rodgers, who also proved me wrong this year, looks absolutely amazing. AJ Dillon is somebody that I am starting to gain a little bit hope for in Dynasty. If one of those guys doesn't come back, I think if it's a 2-man show, he's going to eventually maybe work into the goal line packages. Maybe him and Aaron Jones will split that because Jones is really good on the goal line. But what he showed me this past week was he's an NFL caliber running back, even if it's a replacement level guy. A replacement level running back on a really good offense is an RB1. Just look at, I was going to say David Montgomery, but that offense kind of stinks. But I think if the volume and the opportunity is there on that type of offense, he's going to be somebody I'm buying in on and prove me completely wrong because he looked a lot better than what I saw on his tape in Boston College.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to take the full L on AJ Dillon, but like I tweeted it yesterday, like I think he was very impressive. And some people responded and said like, look, Tennessee Titans are buns, and I even said like Tennessee defense is buns. Like they're literally like one of the worst bottom 3 defense across the board at every single position. So you got to take it with a little bit of grain of salt, but he looked good. I mean, I think the reason why I was kind of excited was because he was breaking tackles. He was, running through tackles. He wasn't elusive by any means. He's a lumbering, like huge, massive guy, but he was running through tackles. He on that touchdown run that he did get, he basically fought for like the last 2 yards by himself, extending. He was getting used in the receiving game. I wouldn't say he's great there yet, but maybe he's capable. But we've seen this mold play out before, right? And it played out in the form of Derrick Henry. Is he a Derrick Henry? Hell no. Derrick Henry was an absolute beast, also in college as well. AJ Dillon was great as college too, but not Derrick Henry level. And it would take a Derrick Henry level type improvement for him to like get there. But like Matt LaFleur saw Derrick Henry, he used Derrick Henry down the stretch the way he did. So maybe there's room here. And to your point about the Packers, I mean, they might not bring Aaron Jones back. I mean, it's looking like it's likely they don't bring him back just because it
Man,
is a
I
little
don't
bit
get
of
it. Like, you don't have to pay him top dollar. Like, just give him like 10 million. He'll probably be happy. He looks, it's just me, or is he like a top 5 running back when you watch him play? Like,
oh
every
yeah,
game there's a
easily.
big run, and he's so good on the goal line, but they just
Yeah.
didn't use him there at all this
He's
year.
top 5, and he's not 5. But I think the problem is like, now that they have this game with AJ Dillon, I could totally see the coaches and people like talking themselves into saying like, hey, we got a guy, we don't have that much cap space. Let's try and spend it elsewhere. So I could totally see them kind of, giving Aaron Jones the boot, which sucks because, Aaron Jones is just a great fit for that offense. I would have loved to see him come back and play with them. But, wherever he goes, we'll be on the watch for that. But yeah, AJ Dillon definitely looked a lot better and showed a lot of the traits that I personally didn't see in college. Maybe film grinders out there saw it. I did not see it. I did not see tackle breaking ability personally, but it's good to see him kind of get that, get that run in. And, contrary to popular belief, like even though we don't like a player and coming in the draft, it doesn't mean we're like rooting against them to fail. Like I don't care about being proven wrong. Like these are dudes playing for their livelihood. So if they prove me wrong and they ball out, man, I will be the first to admit it and just, kind of chug along with them. But if AJ Dillon continues down the path, he could be a nice value down the line, but he will be like that first and second down grinder. I just really don't see him being a 3-down back, but those guys still have value. And if you're as long as you're on a good team, right? You don't want to be a first and second down grinder on a shitty team because that means you're not going to be in there for the most of the time when it matters most. But if you're on a good team like the Packers, who score a lot, who have a top end offensive line, right? They have like probably the best center in the league and one of the best left tackles in the league. And David, like I always fucking slaughter this guy's name.
Bakhtiari.
But
I'll
yeah,
save you
David.
because you gave me the Earl Thomas. I'll save you the Bakhtiari.
Yeah, David Bakhtiari. So if those guys come back, AJ Dillon can absolutely be a fantasy asset.
Mike, how about 2 other guys that we were completely wrong on? 2 other rookies, and I feel like this is a mistake, not necessarily a mistake, but it was like something that I don't think is fixable based on both of our approaches in Brandon Ayuk and Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're more analytical, I'm more film based, and I did like Brandon Ayuk a little bit. I think what I could have done better with Brandon Ayuk is like, okay, he went to a Shanahan offense. He's extremely versatile. Shanahan has shown with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. He brought in Jerick McKinnon, who was a quarterback in college and catches passes out of the backfield. He wants to use versatile guys. Maybe him picking him in the first round, he's going to carve out a role for him. Claypool as well. Like when I watched him play, I was definitely a bigger fan of Ayuk's film than Claypool's because Notre Dame just like seemed to not use him as a receiver,
Mhm.
or like put any of his skill set to an optimum level, I guess you could say. Like he wasn't burning guys down the field. He was running like 2-yard slants. And then we see him go out in Pittsburgh and be an absolute animal. That 4-touchdown game was immaculate. He just went out there, he made a name for himself. And then from there on out, like aside from these past few weeks, he has been a great receiver, basically a wide receiver too, week in and week out. The only thing is, like, how many times are we going to see this opportunity where a guy has not so great of a profile? The draft capital is somewhat there. I know the athleticism was there for Claypool and the draft capital was there for Ayuk, but like, are you really going to bet on hitting on these one-hit wonders or like these one-off guys year after year? Like, would you, going back, obviously, you'd probably take Brandon Ayuk over Jalen Reagor, but that's hindsight is 2020, right? Jalen Reagor was athletic. He had the breakout age. I know he played in the Big 12, and there was that concern. But Brandon Ayuk played for Arizona State, which made N'Keal Harry look good. So I feel like looking back, it's easy to say, oh, I should have had this guy over this guy. But I think realistically, if I'm being honest, I'm probably going to make this type of mistake again. I might fade a guy like, just off the top of my head, I don't know much about him, like Chris Olave. I might be higher on Seth Williams and Chris Olave. And then a year from now, I'll be looking back and being like, oh, Chris Olave went to an offense that's going to want to use him. Seth Williams can't separate. So for me personally, I'm just gonna come out and say, like, I'll probably make this mistake again. I'm not gonna be afraid to make this mistake again because I'll just have a take and go with it. But definitely wrong on both of those guys because they've proven to be, at least for me, top 24 dynasty receivers, and their versatility has really translated to the next level. And it was something that I didn't see out of Claypool at all in college.
Yeah, these are one of those mistakes. I think Claypool specifically, that's a mistake I'm just gonna eat. 9 times out of 10 because like the thing is like when you take an analytical approach to the game, like I do, you're not gonna get 100% hits. Like that's just not gonna happen. You're going to miss, and that type of profile, like a senior that like didn't break out till his last year, that got draft capital, but like just basically crushed the underwear Olympics. Those types of guys are guys I'm going to miss on more often than not, and I'm okay with it because most of them miss. Like most of them are not Chase Claypools, right? Most of them are like Miles Boykins. Like that's the reality of what most of these guys turn out to be. So I'm kind of okay missing on a guy like that. And it's not like it really hurt me, right? Because the analytics still came out strong this year because CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson are both guys who analytics really really love. T Higgins was someone I really loved because of the analytics. Even Lavisca was someone that I liked because of the analytics. So and then we faded Henry Ruggs, right? Because he was an analytical nightmare, and that was a huge fade, right? And Jalen Reagor hasn't worked out yet. He's shown some flashes, still has a lot to go. I don't think I'm going to be totally writing him off just yet, but definitely, the right move was to take someone like Brandon Ayuk. And I think that's one area where I can probably take a little bit of a learning point away is, if you dig into his breakout age, it's a little bit later because he actually played for JUCO. So that's part of the reason why I later on came around a bit on him, and I did rank him above of like Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman was another favorite that people loved, right? It was a super athletic, big guy, senior, didn't break out to his last year, and he hasn't really worked out. So like for every Chase Claypool, there's like a couple other busts that I'm fading because I'm fading Chase Claypool. So I'm actually totally okay with that. But for Brandon Ayuk, I think what we'll have to do is try and make some adjustments for like people that come out of JUCO and see like what that looks like. I'm not gonna like adjust them into like the stratosphere of someone like a Jalen Reagor. Like if I see a Jalen Reagor versus Brandon Ayuk, I'm going to make that mistake 9 times out of 10 every single time. But just given how much like other film guys that I respected did like Brandon Ayuk, given how well the skill set he was fit with Kyle Shanahan in terms of his usage, I think those are some insights we take away. But like you said, at the end of the day, like I'm always going to be a more analytics focused driven approach. And these two guys aren't enough to actually shift that hit percentage for me to actually move off of that.
Yeah, and speaking of JUCO, it's like kind of a one-off topic. I was listening to a podcast. I think Mark Ingram and Cam Jordan do one, and they brought on Alvin Kamara, and I didn't really know about his story in high school or college. And this isn't like part of this video. I'm just bringing this up, but he was talking about how he was actually at Alabama, and they had so many running backs there
Mhm.
that he wanted to transfer. Nick Saban wouldn't let him transfer, So he was just basically an asshole the entire time he was there. Had to go to a JUCO so he could have like that gap year or whatever. And then he went to Tennessee and didn't really produce. But that kind of changed my perspective. I'm like, this guy was recruited and was going to play running back at Alabama. Didn't want to be there. Then he went to JUCO. Like, you shouldn't just be like, oh, this guy went to JUCO, he's a bum. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
that's just how things work out for players. I know Hakeem Butler as well kind of had that because I don't really remember his full backstory, but I think he had like a tough upbringing. He had to go to JUCO before he went to college. So not that you have to like look super in depth into these things, as you said, like you can't just over adjust because a guy went to JUCO, but sometimes there's good explanations for the route that these guys take. And if you go from a JUCO to producing at Arizona State to being a first round pick, maybe that does say something about your talent. So that's definitely someone that we missed on. And another guy that we missed on, I brought up in the intro, and I'm kind of happy I missed on him because I hedged my bets. It's Justin Herbert, man. This
the
kid,
god.
he's an animal. I mean, he kind of slowed down once Austin Eckler came back, and I think also like defenses start to kind of understand him. Like the Bills defenses look better. That he kind of got shut down by them. The Patriots defense, 45-0. Like that was a tough look. But throughout the entire season, he just proved me wrong. And I actually went back and read my write up on Justin Herbert because I kind of figured the Chargers were going to take him. So I took over that part of the write up in the Big Dogs Draft Guide, and I'm like, yeah, this kid fucking stinks. Like I don't want him at all. All he does is throw checkdowns, and that's what I think he's going to do. But I did say, like, I think he landed in objectively the best situation of all the first round quarterbacks because he does have Austin Eckler, Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen in the short part of the game. And if that's what he's going to lean on, it's going to work out well. Turns out that's what ended up happening for him. I know Eckler missed some time, but I mean, even the deep ball, like his only real deep threats are Jalen Guyton, Tyron Johnson, and Mike Williams when he's not getting RKO'd out of nowhere. So I think if they add somebody in the draft this year, he's going to be immaculate. And I'm not so sure what I can do to adjust my thoughts on a quarterback like Justin Herbert. Like we all thought he was going to come out as a junior. He didn't. He goes back as a senior. He doesn't really take a huge step up. Like you would think, okay, this guy's older and he didn't really improve. Why would I be in on him? I don't know. I feel like quarterbacks, everybody says it's hard to evaluate the position. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the future to adjust for this. And I feel like this quarterback class is like such a good quarterback class that you can't be too low on anybody. Like nobody's low on Trevor Lawrence. I guess Justin Fields, people are a little bit lower on, but he's probably going to show out in the college football playoff, which is going to readjust everything. Mac Jones and Zach Wilson, like they're looking great. Trey Lance didn't really play this year, but I feel like everybody's going to be high in quarterbacks this year where like a Justin Herbert situation won't really play itself out. But in the future, if it does, I don't know. I think this is like a Claypool where you kind of just got to eat it because there's no rational way to justify why you were wrong on a guy like Herbert.
Yeah, I mean, my lesson learned here was I just like way too overweighted his senior year when he had already shown enough in his like in his younger seasons, like in his sophomore year, like Justin Herbert had already shown out. I mean, last year there was talk about him being the top pick overall, right? Over a Kyler
Kyler
Murray.
Murray,
So
and then had
like yeah, I
Jalen.
think I just like way too over indexed on like one bad year and didn't really understand that like, what I learned later is that his coaches were awful. So
They
his
still
coaches
are. So
at Oregon were awful. Like the talent he played with was awful. I went back and looked at his wide receivers, like all bums. Like none of them are really going to
who
do
was that guy
anything in the NFL.
Mitchell? Something Mitchell he played with. I remember reading something. His comp was Odell. I'm like, what the? Who's
Yeah,
writing
yeah. It was
Dillon
what was his
Mitchell?
name? Something Mitchell. Yeah, he
I almost called him Donovan Mitchell. I'm not going to mess up on another name this episode.
yeah, he was oh fuck, what was he? Was it Jawan? That was like his junior year, right? Mitchell.
Yeah,
Mitchell was
Dillon
his junior.
Mitchell. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I totally like wrote off his junior year and his like prior seasons where he was like really good and really efficient. Like in his sophomore year, he was incredibly efficient and looked like all the part of a franchise quarterback. And then also, I just didn't pay enough attention to draft capital, man. He only went one pick after Tua. So, like realistically speaking, in superflex drafts, he really shouldn't fall that far behind Tua as well, from that perspective. So, draft capital does a lot of the talking for me going forward in quarterbacks because it's just too hard to evaluate. I suck at evaluating it. I recognize that. So I'm going to do that, let that do the talking and just really dig in more to like the situation in college to try and like identify why someone didn't do as well as they did. But also not penalize someone for staying an extra year and not doing as well as I would have hoped they did, right? So there's lots of reasons that someone stays, and Justin Herbert, maybe he wanted to finish college, maybe he wanted to play, is not as bad of a is not as much of a death sentence to quarterbacks as it is to like wide receivers in terms of like staying for a senior year and not declaring early. So I just think I need to recalibrate how I think about those various factors, and then also I underplayed his athleticism, man. I mean, the underwear Olympics, people often overrate them, which is why I tend to underrate them. But, when he came to quarterbacks, like he went out and showed out like a really, really good performance, which kind of provided some insight into what he could do for you on the ground as an athletic running quarterback and a mobile quarterback. So, but even having said all that, it would have been really hard to kind of peg Justin Herbert for the year that he had, like literally one of the greatest rookie quarterback seasons of all time, right? And whenever you're talking about all time stats, those are hard to see and hard to come by. So technically, anyone that had Joe Burrow as the 101 missed on Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert came out and balled out and like left everyone in the dust, not just Tua, but also Joe Burrow. So, I'm happy because I'm sitting on a bunch of Justin Herbert rookie cards, which are going to probably go up a lot in value once he gets announced as rookie of the year. But I'm unhappy because I did not get enough of him in Dynasty, and he is now basically unattainable in super flex leagues. So yeah, unless you want to pay an arm and a leg, you'd have to pay like, Lamar Jackson plus. You'd probably have to pay like a Kyler Murray or something of that sort to kind of land a Justin Herbert, which means that to me, he's basically untouchable. But yeah, one of the greatest misses of all time by myself.
Do you think this is
in
going
year
to
one.
change your outlook for this upcoming draft? I know running back isn't too deep, but it's extremely top heavy with the top three of ETN, Najee Harris, and Javonte Williams. We all know wide receivers deep, and you brought up that Justin Herbert was going routinely 110, 111, 112.
Yeah.
If there's a first round wide receiver quarterback this year, even if it's like Kyle Trask, if he goes whatever pick the 49ers are you going to let him fall out of the first round? Because realistically on the 49ers, he has a good shot to eventually start his rookie year. And if a quarterback wins a job, even if it's like Dwayne Haskins, you can flip it for a first as a rookie. Even if Kyle Trask doesn't really do too well, like week 1, week 2, after he gets that job, you can flip him. So are you going to let a guy like Trask, because I feel like he's the lowest of like the elite tier of quarterbacks, would you let him fall out of the first round if he lands in a spot like Washington or San Francisco where they will realistically start him at some point this year? Are you going to take a wide receiver ahead of them, or are you just going to be like, no, we saw Herbert gain so much value that I'm not going to miss on that opportunity again?
No, it depends on like where they're getting drafted. Like even though I didn't like Herbert, I never let him fall past the 110 in any draft I was in, just because he had the top 6 pick draft capital. So like it really depends on where Kyle Trask goes. I don't see Kyle Trask going top 10. He might go in like the range of like a Jordan Love in the best case scenario. So like once you get out of the top 10, the hit rate like falls dramatically for those quarterbacks. So I'm fine with letting him go. But like if a quarterback goes in the top 10, they have to go in the first round of your rookie drafts. I don't care who they are. If you don't like them, you have to take them because they're going to get a starting job, and the second they start, they're worth the first round pick. So like your downside is very minimalized. So like with Justin Herbert, even though I didn't like him, like in drafts where I had the 110 pick, I still took him. But I think I need to adjust that up even more. Like I had Tua going at like the 1.04, so it didn't make sense to have Justin Herbert at the 1.10. What would have made sense is to have Justin Herbert in the top 5, top 6 picks as well. So I think that's the adjustment I'll make for someone that gets that high of a draft capital, even if I don't like them particularly. But I'm not going to adjust like the Jordan Love tier of quarterbacks in the first round. I'm still going to take a shot on top end wide receivers there over a quarterback. But yeah, it really depends on where they go, I think.
Yeah, because I know you like Tua a lot more than Herbert, and ranking them back to back 104, 105, that's not you saying I think Herbert is going to challenge Tua. It's like the value of the quarterback position is so high that if a guy has a realistic shot to win out the starting job, you have to take him that high to return a lot more value than you're going to get out of like maybe reaching for a Jerry Jeudy or even like a CeeDee Lamb. You can get CeeDee Lamb plus a whole bunch of shit for Herbert right now. So I think a lesson to be learned as well, like it's a hypothetical, but say Justin Fields goes to the Jets and Zach Wilson goes to Carolina, right? If he goes to Carolina with those weapons, you might not think he's on the same level, or we'll say Mac Jones, because I feel like Zach Wilson's close to Justin Fields. If he goes to Carolina, I feel like you have to have them close, even if you think the talent is heavily in Justin Fields' favor, just because, he's got all those weapons. He's got Christian McCaffrey and all the guys on the outside and a good offensive mind running the team that, the chances of him returning value, even with like a Rondale Moore, I would bet on a guy like Mac Jones returning a lot more value than a rookie receiver and being able to flip it for a Rondale Moore plus once the season gets started.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is going to be a crazy class of quarterbacks. People are already talking about it being the greatest quarterback class of all time. I don't know what that, because there was a class with Dan Marino and 3 other Hall of Famers. Was it 2 or 3? 3 other Hall of Famers. They had Dan Marino. It had what's his name? Jim Kelly, right? And then it had who went first overall in this? Oh yeah, and John Elway. It's like 3 bona fide.
I have no clue.
Yeah, first ballot Hall of Famers. That's probably still the best quarterback class of all time. But this one is going to be interesting because the people are talking about 5 to 6 quarterbacks in the first round of the NFL draft.
It's like
So
2017, right? With like Baker, Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen.
yeah, exactly. So very, very similar to that. And if like guys like Zach Wilson and Mac Jones start flirting with like the top 10 to 15 picks, you're gonna have to pay attention to them, and you're not gonna have be able to let them out of the first round. What I will say is this: Konami quarterbacks are ones I'm going to value higher. So like a Trey Lance, I'm going to rank him ahead of a Mac Jones. Zach Wilson, not a full Konami, but still like offers a little bit more on the running side. I'm gonna rank them a little bit ahead of like the more traditional pocket passing quarterbacks, because like if you don't have Konami quarterback, you are at a significant disadvantage in today's NFL, just given how many of them there are.
Yeah,
So
even being
that's
able
the
to
one
like
thing.
improvise too, because Herbert's not really running a lot, but he's scrambling and
Yeah,
making plays out of the pocket. So I think athleticism is a huge factor in today's NFL. Just like Russell Wilson too, he's obviously a great quarterback, but a lot of his points come off of him just improvising and throwing it deeper, taking shots, and the defense falls apart. So I think you're completely right. Like those top four guys, the Trevor Lawrence, Fields, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance, they can all run a little bit, and I think that's going to help them a whole lot at the next level. Whereas Mac Jones and Kyle Trask are a little bit more, like they're a little less mobile than those other guys.
yeah, 100%. So, but yeah, I mean, the rule still applies. Like we even said it when we hated Justin Herbert. We're like, dude, you cannot take him outside of the first round because he has too much draft capital. So, lesson learned there. Never gonna fade Herbert the God ever again. I don't know if we'll ever see this type of ascension again, but make sure you let draft capital do the speaking for you on quarterbacks, because do not pretend to be like you're a quarterback whisperer. You are not one. I am definitely not one. I know that for damn sure. So I'm gonna let draft capital do a lot of the talking for me on that front.
Yeah, and I think that's all I have personally. Like Aaron Rodgers, I think like everybody was kind of wrong on Aaron Rodgers. Gardner Minshew, I had like an irrational love for him. Somebody DM'd me a tweet that I had. I said if he doesn't finish top 15, I'm getting a mullet. He ended up like quarterback 14 on a per game basis, so I saved myself from looking like a fucking piece of shit. So I consider that a win on a per game basis. Zach Moss, we weren't high on him. I think the point to take away is if you're like fat and slow and you're on an offense that can't run the ball, just don't draft him. Just going down the list of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like people think it was a flop, and it was because a lot of other rookie running backs look better than him. The guy was on pace for 1,350 yards from scrimmage. Only 21 running backs have done this since 2000. So basically, you get one running back a year to hit that mark. Only James Robinson has done it through week 16 to this point. So for as much as of a disappointment as he is, he's still in the Chiefs offense. He's still young. He still has the ability to catch passes. I'm not going to take an L on that yet. And I think it provides a pretty good buy low opportunity on him. I know people are like, oh, Damian Williams is going to come back and be good. Damian Williams was also like kind of a workhorse on the Chiefs offense. It doesn't take too much for a workhorse on the Chiefs offense to look good. So I'm going to buy in on CEH if anybody is selling him as well. And then obviously like, Jalen Reagor. We don't.
He looked good.
Reagor.
So CH looked good. I don't think it's a bust. And he got hurt obviously in the last, and then Le'Veon Bell came in as well. We didn't see that coming. But he's looked good. I mean, he's elusive. He's breaking tackles. He's not getting the work in the receiving game that everyone thought. What I will say though is your boy held strong at JT 101 throughout the entire year. The entire
He's looking
year.
every bit the 101.
The entire year. So I think the lesson there is when you have two guys who both have draft capital, who both landed in, objectively pretty good spots, don't let that sway it too much. But then again, like, CH could have easily popped off as well, and we'd all be laughing. So I just think like, when you have guys in that tier, in the same tier, this is why I do tiers, right? It's like when guys are close, you got to have tiers and do the judgment. I know everyone's out there taking Jonathan Taylor victory laps these days, but I don't think you should give up on CH either. I'm a buyer in the offseason. If people bought on David Montgomery, you should absolutely be buying on CEH, because I think, his trajectory can be much better than what we saw with David Montgomery coming into the second year. So I think that's a great one. And yeah, Jalen Reagor, I'm not buying anymore, but I'm also not like panic selling either, because I kind of want to see what happens there. And then the last one, we were high on Jalen Hurts, so we're gonna take a small W in this long list of L's that we've shown you, in Jalen Hurts and what he's been able to do, and showing that Konami code and showing that upside as a dynasty quarterback. So if you guys are still waiting on Carson Wentz to get his job back, I mean, I'd punch that ticket in, because I don't think it's happening. Just despite what Doug Peterson, the idiot, wants to say, this is Jalen Hurts. His team, he's going to develop. He's not a great passer yet. We saw that going up against Dallas this past week, but stay patient with him. If you're in a super flex league, I have Jalen Hurts in a couple super flex leagues, and I cannot tell you how happy I am, because some of my quarterbacks are flopping. So he's going to really step into that role for me next year. And if you're trying to acquire him, I think you can still acquire him for a reasonable price, especially after that down game with Dallas. People are going to, jump to the, hey, he can't throw, he can't pass, he's not going to last. What they don't know is like you're basing that off of history, and history is changing in terms of how the
Guess who
NFL
else
views these
isn't
quarterbacks.
great at throwing and is almost an MVP candidate? Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has
Yeah.
not been accurate this year, and
Yeah.
people are touting him as an MVP, or at least did so for the first like 12 weeks of the season. So obviously he's not that caliber of thrower. And just touching on like us, I kind of took an L on him, but I think everybody kind of did, right? Because they did sign Carson Wentz to a long-term deal. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers too. Like you kind of had to fade Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts for these guys you could see producing in the near term, because I don't think anybody saw this type of fall off for Carson Wentz. But
Nope.
if you were one of the lucky ones and you really believed in Jalen Hurts and you thought Carson Wentz was a ginger fuck who had no confidence, and you grabbed him in the second round, you're laughing all the way to the bank, because he's basically a top 12 dynasty quarterback right now, despite the struggles he showed against a mediocre Dallas Cowboys defense. So big up to you on that one, Mike. You definitely had a lot more faith in Jalen Hurts than I did. Not to say I was like extremely low on him, but you held true and you have him in more spots than I do, because I have absolutely zero Jalen Hurts, because I had like first round picks and fourth round picks, nothing in the second.
Yeah. So look, that's all we got for you guys. I'm sure we took many other L's throughout, but I think we want to talk about these because there were a lot of lessons learned here that we can kind of apply going forward. And, fear not, we will take many more L's in the offseason into the next year, the year after that. If there's one thing you can count on, is you can count on the bunk bed bros to take losses, because
Can't spell bunk bed without an L.
Yeah. So we're going to get those losses, but you can always count on us to come back and reflect on them and hopefully learn some lessons, improve. And as long as we win more than we lose, that's the name of the game. So that's all we got. Hopefully it was helpful. Stick with us, man. Stick with us in the Dynasty offseason, because this is when the real season begins. This is when Noah and I are going to start doing the research. He's going to grind the film. I'm going to grind the numbers. And then I'm going to try and grind the film, and he's going to grind the numbers, and we're going to sync up and try and provide you guys the takes heading into the offseason that will help you set you up to be in a position to win next year. And that's the key, man. There is no offseason. People are going to be taking time off. We will be grinding. And that is the difference between building a dynasty and losing like a sack of potatoes. People that take the breaks and go on vacation, because there's no vacations, no breaks, no offseason for us. We'll be here all week long, all off season long. If you want to see specific types of content, make sure you drop it in the comments. We try and read all the comments, and we'll try and I think we'll do some like tutorials on analytics. Maybe, Noah will do a couple film breakdown sessions with you guys, and we'll kind of like go through what we look for.
That's for my OnlyFans. That's the only
yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's OnlyFans. Make sure you subscribe to that. FB God on OnlyFans. I don't know if that's real account. If it is,
somebody's gonna make that shit and like try to sell me the domain.
Yeah, exactly. But that's all we got for you. If you liked, make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you smash the subscribe button. Follow us throughout the off season. There's gonna be a lot of stuff coming your way. That's all we got, man.